I'm delighted to be asked to present today, and that I'm also a little surprised because I don't consider myself terribly tech savvy. So my goal here is to show you that if I can do it, anyone can do it. In fact, I'd probably say that I would belong to the Blanche DuBois School of Information Technology, Blanche DuBois being the fated Southern belle from Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire, and who was known to say often,
"Whoever you are, I've always depended on the kindness of strangers."
So that's kind of my approach to technology is, please, kind sir, would you help me with this problem? Since I spend most of my time with instruments and with music that in some ways reached their heyday several hundred years ago, finding myself in with technology is always a new experience. So when my department head, Gary Mortensen, asked me would I be interested in creating an online course or an online version of the course Women in Music, which I had taught previously, I was really intrigued and somewhat terrified. I personally kind of depend a lot on seeing people's faces and to see how the material is going over. So I thought it was very interesting to think about how I could translate that into a medium where I would never see these people's faces. How many of you are teaching online? Great. For those of you that have not yet done it, this last fall was my first time, I would really encourage you to give it some thought. It's really a fascinating way to present the material, and in some ways I got to know the students better teaching online than I do in a regular course because everyone had to contribute. So it can be a lot of fun. But there are also a lot of challenges, especially in music. Oh, sorry, I missed this one. My world before online teaching was dominated by these gentlemen and this instrument. So the first challenge that I discovered was the idea of listening. You can't just steal music and put it on the web. That's illegal. And if you're teaching face-to-face in a classroom, you take the CD that you own and you walk in and you play it, and no copyright problems, no hassles. So I really had to find a text that came with a good CD, and I had a lot of other requirements for the text as well. I wanted to cover classical music, and I was most familiar with that, but then I also wanted to cover non-classical music. There was a lot of request for that the last time I had taught the course. So I wanted to cover women's contributions in world music, women's contributions in jazz, blues, pop, rock, country, all these kinds of things. So I was looking for that in a text. I also wanted a text that had a music appreciation approach, one that didn't assume that the students knew anything about music. This course is cross-listed with women's studies and is meant to be a general course targeted at the general populace. And because it's cross-listed with women's studies, I wanted the text to include aspects relevant to women's studies, societal pressures on women for why they couldn't compose or perform, or objectification in pop music and things like that. So I had a pretty heavy-duty laundry list of things, plus I wanted a good CD of performances of music by women. So I found this book, Women, Music, and Culture by Julie C. Dunbar, and it was pretty much, I thought, was going to answer all my needs. It came with a CD, so they had already cleared all the copyright issues, and I thought that was just going to be great. Unfortunately, when I got the book, I realized that only about a fifth of the music covered in the book was on the CD, that they had just taken things that were harder to find and put it on there. But for another $50, you could buy the rest of them on iTunes as a playlist. Well, that made me kind of angry. So I didn't really want to charge the students another $50 unless they wanted those particular performances. So I set about finding some free versions of the music, and I was able to get all but about 7, and so they only had to pay about $7 extra for some music. So the first resource that I used is the Naxos Music Library, which is a really incredible site. And this is available, K-State subscribes to it. So anyone can log in. And Naxos, I forget the exact wording of the description on the library database's website, but it's something like Naxos is trying to record every piece of music ever written. And they're doing a good job of it. There's a very, very wide range. We don't have access to all of them. Some of the historical recordings, K-State for some reason doesn't have access to those files, but anything you can think of and more. If you search the composer's name, chances are you will find some recordings of some of that person's music. So I was able to use that, and it streams the audio. So if you're sitting in your office and you'd like to listen to some music, log into Naxos, search, and it's just a great resource. The other one that I used a lot was YouTube. And stop that. Oh dear, I'm sorry. I'll come back to those in a second after I've talked. YouTube is particularly good for a lot of historical recordings. And so there is a lot of music written by women that is not always recorded, but performed. So YouTube has great opportunities from like people's senior recitals. They might do a mix of music. Performers or composers trying to promote their music might have a YouTube video. And so if it's out there in the public, it's a little dicey copyright-wise, but I would just provide the links for the students so that they could come back and go ahead and check them out. So Elvis was on there a second ago because, as I said, YouTube has a lot of historical performances. If there's a niche, there's somebody out there who's really into it and has gathered recordings or videos, historical footage, and put it on YouTube. So one of the exercises that I did with the class one week when we were doing blues was to have them listen to first Elvis's version of Hound Dog, and then Big Mama Thornton, who actually recorded it first, and see what the difference in the performances gave them in terms of their perception of the words. So now we'll go back to Elvis.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog. You cry all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Cry all the time. Well, you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine. Well, they said you was high class. Well, that was a start. Yeah, they said you was high class. Well, that was a start. Yeah, you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time.
Okay? And now here's Big Mama Thornton.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, been snooping on the door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, been snooping on the door. You can wag your tail, but I ain't gonna feed you no more. You told me you was hot, man, but I can see through that. Yes, you told me you was hot, man, but I can see through that. And Daddy, I know you ain't no real cool cat. You ain't nothing but a hound dog.
So a lot of the students said in their comments was, the first thing was, I always wondered why Elvis was singing about a dog. You know, it seemed like a really silly song, but as soon as they heard this one, the context of it being more about a relationship was very clear to them. So the second challenge was not only getting them music, but testing them on it. It's very traditional in music classes to have what we still call drop the needle tests, which came from when we're still using LPs, and the teacher would come in with an LP and pick up the needle and just randomly drop it on a spot, and then as a student you had to identify what the piece was and the composer and all that kind of thing. Well, we have a wonderful digital age now, and it's, again, without being able to go in the room and speed forward the CD randomly and play it, how do you do that? So I had to create sound files, and the first test, we tried having them come up in another window, which unfortunately for a number of the students locked them out of the test. So for the second test, we came up with something else. And one of my colleagues, Gordon Lewis, who had been teaching Introduction to History of Jazz, had come up with a detailed set of instructions on how to embed a player. So we used that and it worked great, and if anybody would like those, please email me and I'll be happy to send you those instructions. The first thing is that it does have to be saved as an MP3, and then you can change the file name to make it anonymous, because obviously you don't want the file with the title of the piece scrolling across. It kind of defeats the purpose. Two of the programs that I found useful for that, Snaps Pro is a screen capture software, and I could capture the audio that way, save it as a movie file, and then convert that to an MP3 and use it that way. KeepVid, also, I just found out recently from Ben about that site, and you can save it either as an MP3, or you can also save movie files and embed them the same way through these same instructions into a test question. So those are both useful programs. So I'm going to move on now to some general technology for music teaching that I've used in the violin studio. And the first one of those is Skype. In music, we've used Skype a lot. There was a few years when I had to go away to Minneapolis for a week at a time, and I would teach my lessons through Skype. And the students called them the Harry Potter lessons, because basically all they saw of me was my head in a box, sitting there talking to them. And the funniest thing is, of course, the camera was here and the computer monitor was here, so they would talk to the computer monitor the whole time, so I never saw their eyes. I've also used it to bring in experts. I had a physical therapist with an arts medicine specialty talk to my pedagogy class about structural issues with playing the violin. One of my colleagues, Kurt Gartner, has actually used Skype for remote performances. He's performed in real time with people in Sweden. And he's also used it, since he's the only percussion teacher, when we have our end of the semester playing juries, they're called in a very non-threatening kind of language, performance exams. I believe last semester, one of the people sitting on the jury through Skype was the timpanist in the New York Philharmonic. So he brings in outside experts to be able to listen to his students and give comments. So that's been a very helpful tool. The next one I want to talk about is the Amazing Slowdowner. This is a lot of jazz people use this to actually slow down the music without changing pitch, or change the pitch if they want to play in a different key, so that they could slow a recording way down and hear exactly what's going on, what the notes are being played, and they can transcribe it or learn it that way. I've used it. There's a site in England, an English pianist who has recorded a number of accompaniments to instrumental music. It's just the piano part, and that's pianoaccompaniments.com. And you can buy those accompaniments and then use the Amazing Slowdowner. I'm just going to come out of here for a second and download those. And then through the Amazing Slowdowner, if you want it a little faster, a little slower, you can adjust the tempo without changing the pitch. So I'm going to turn off my house mic here a second and grab my violin and just play it a little bit. So this example is the Rachmaninoff Vocalese. And I just have to be a little quick about hitting the button. So let's say one day I wanted to make my student work on their bow control. I could slow it way down. Let's try there at 87% of the original speed. That mean to my students, or if they're learning a piece and they can't play it at tempo yet, this is a way that they can get used to the piano part, get used to their entrances, and before they take the time of our much in-demand piano staff. So it's a really useful program and has been very helpful in getting people to learn music. There is also something called Smart Music, but they don't have a lot for string instruments, and it's a very, you have to pay a subscription to it, and it's much more flexible than Amazing Slow Downer. It will actually follow people as they play.
Excuse me. Hey, Cora, haven't you talked long enough yet?
Well, Mr. Top Hat, you're just in time. I'm almost out of material.
What about Captain Broccoli and his music theory videos? Those are always good for a laugh.
Hey, thanks. That's a great idea.
You know my friends and I are always happy to help the unfortunate among us.
So Mr. Top Hat comes to us by way of Extra Normal, which the idea behind Extra Normal is if you can type, you can make a movie. And so a number of people, musicians, have used this tool both for venting their own spleen on things, as well as for some very humorous educational purposes. There's one music theorist in particular who has made a series of videos featuring Captain Broccoli trying to explain theoretical concepts to a rather dense other superhero. So I'm going to play you just a little bit of Captain Broccoli trying to explain triad positions.
Captain Broccoli, how do you know when a triad needs 6/4 or just 6 or some other number?
Those are figure-based symbols. They are used to indicate the position of the chord.
But what do they mean?
The number 6 means it is a first inversion chord with the third of the chord in the bass.
I thought the bass note was the root of the chord.
No. The bass note is the lowest sounding tone in the chord. It could be anything, root, third, fifth.
You will gather
or
that
even
these are
seventh.
questions often
Most
found
often,
in theory
the root is in
classes.
the bass. That is why it is called root position.
I thought the root note was always the bass.
No. As I just said, any note could be in the bass. You shouldn't automatically assume that the lowest note is the root.
Great. The lowest note is the root. Thank you.
No, you are not listening to me. Any note could be the lowest note. For example, the fifth could be the lowest note. Then the chord is in second inversion.
I am very interested in this second inversion. Does it use figure bass?
Yes. To indicate a second inversion chord, use the figures 6 and 4.
Isn't it what you use for first inversion?
No, first inversion uses only the number 6.
Great. I understand. 6 means that it is first inversion and the bass is the root.
No. I think your maskings may be too tight. You don't seem to get it. The bass can be any note of the chord. In first inversion, it is the third of the chord that is in the bass.
You keep changing your mind. How am I supposed to remember that the bass is always the root?
You are not supposed to remember that. The bass is not always the root. Let's try this again. Do you see the floor?
Yes, of course I see the floor.
Good. Let us pretend the floor is the bass line. It is the lowest part of the room.
That sounds a little weird, but okay.
Now, let us pretend that your body is a triad.
My body is not a triad.
I know that. We are just pretending it is a triad for this explanation.
What kind of triad am I? Am I a major triad or a minor triad?
It does not matter. Will you please let me continue?
I want to be a minor triad. It makes me feel thinner.
Fine. You are a minor triad. Your feet are on the bottom of your body.
Yes, so are yours.
Right. We are both standing with our feet on the floor. This is like a triad in root position.
The root is in the base. I like that.
Yes. So I have noticed. Now, if I pushed you over, what would happen?
I would use my superpowers to defend myself.
I'm not talking about that. If you fell over, you would land on your behind, and your feet would be up in the air.
That would not happen to me. I am a superhero.
Fine. If you pushed someone else over,
Yes, I like that.
they would no longer have their feet on the floor. They would not be in root position. This is like first inversion, because the middle of the triad is on the floor.
My waist is slender. That is why I would make a good minor triad. My utility belt and thumb accentuate my minor third.
That is not really the point. Now, if you pick somebody up by their feet,
I am good at that. I am a superhero.
yes. But if you pick somebody up by their feet,
I know. They would be upside down.
yes, and if you set them down on their head, it would be like a second inversion triad. The top of the triad would be in the base.
Sure. I guess that makes sense. Can I let go of them now?
Yes, of course. You are not really holding somebody upside down. It was just to illustrate a point.
I understand much better. I am a minor triad. I am always in root position because I am a superhero. Other people are weak and can be pushed over into other positions.
Not quite the point I was trying to make, but let's go with that.
People on their ass.
Third, call it a third.
People on their third are in first inversion and should be branded with the number 6.
You don't need to brand them.
People on top of their head.
The fifth of the triad.
People with their fifth on the floor are in second inversion and should have a tattoo of a 6 and 4.
Again, like the branding, the tattoos are unnecessary. However, it sounds like you understand triad positions now.
Yes, I am very excited about triad positions. I am going to go push people over now and write figure base symbols on their foreheads. It will be very fun. Thank you, Captain Broccoli.
Please, don't tell anyone that you know me.
So there's some wonderful things out there. And it really is, it's a lot of fun to play around with. Mr. Top Hat and I got acquainted last week, and you type, and there are little ways you can put in facial expressions or motions or things like that. So it's a good way to get some points across to your students, I think. And I want to leave you today with another music theorist in Indiana University, David Newman, who has recorded a number of songs to help with ear training. So we'll play you out with the dominant 7th chord song, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
This is a 1 chord and a 5 in first inversion, then a 6, a passing 1, 6, 4, then 4. But this song might get boring, and you'd probably start ignoring me if I tried naming every single chord. But there's 1 chord that's terrific, and its function is specific, and it hangs around in cadences for fun. With solfege we can state it, if we just arpeggiate it. Yes, sol ti re fa is a dominant 7, it brings us home to 1.
You know, you won't be able to get this out of your head for a long time.
While do can be pleasant to the ear, then there's 5, 7, and 5. Re fi la do, that's a chord we're gonna learn about more next year. We're back to 1 now, and there's that 5 in first inversion, just repeating what we'd played when we'd begun. And this path that we have charted is gonna finish what we started, cause sol ti re fa is a dominant 7, which brings us home to, oh no, that cadence was deceptive. And when went to minor 6 instead of 1. That sort of trick can be effective at making things last longer when we thought that we were done. But here we are again and moving toward the finish, and I think this time we will not wait in vain. 'Cause I'm tired of extending it, I'm ready for the ending, and Salty Ray 5 is our dominant 7 that brings us home again. Yes, Salty Ray 5 is our dominant 7 that brings us home again. Fa-mi, so, ti-do, woo!
So thank you very much.